Is Giorgia Meloni's tough stance on immigration falling apart? Despite her pledges to crack down on illegal crossings, Italy is now the only EU country seeing a surge in migrant arrivals, up nearly 40% this year. I'm Elenja Lucaselli, and today's Newsmaker is Italy's growing migration problem. While the rest of Europe has seen numbers drop, Italy is bucking the trend, largely due to an increase in boats setting sail from Libya, carrying migrants mostly from Africa and South Asia. This comes as Meloni's heavily promoted migrant processing center in Albania remains largely empty and its legality under scrutiny. Adding to the controversy, her government is facing tough questions over the sudden release of a Libyan enforcer wanted by the International Criminal Court. So, is Italy's migration strategy failing? And what does this mean for Meloni's standing in Italy and the wider European Union? We'll discuss this with our guests in just a bit, but first, here's more on the story.
Italy, one of Europe's most vocally anti-migrant nations, now stands as the only EU country seeing an increase in the number of arrivals. It's widely fueled by Pakistani and Bangladeshi arrivals, among others, making the journey sailing from Libya across the Mediterranean. Last year, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni visited Libya to sign cooperation agreements, including ones with warlord General Khalifa Haftar, who is in control of eastern Libya, where most of the migrants were originally taking boats from. The strategy was twofold. Libya would take a more direct role in stemming the flow of migrants, stopping large fishing boats carrying them across the sea. And in parallel, a series of detention hubs would open in Albania to function as processing and holding centres to fast-track migrants intercepted in Italian waters.
Italy has set a good example by signing the Italy-Albania protocol to process asylum applications on Albanian territory, but under Italian and European jurisdiction.
But Libya is a nation divided, with the internationally recognised government in Tripoli in the country's west not controlling territory in the east. Most of the migrants who depart from Libya now arrive legally in the east, then make their way west, where they start their harrowing boat trips. Libya is also accused of treating migrant detainees that they do capture brutally. In January, Haftar's chief of judicial police from Libya's east, Osama El-Masri Najim, who is accused of war crimes and torture of detainees, was arrested in Turin. Despite the issue of an ICC arrest warrant, El-Masri was released by Italian authorities and sent back to Libya by chartered flight. For his alleged victims, this was devastating news.
We ask of the Italian people, those who believe in the justice system, to continue to stand up for what is just, to demand a clear accountability into what has happened.
Meanwhile, the other half of Meloni's signature migrant reduction policy, the Albanian processing hubs, sit idle. The hubs were meant to process 3,000 people intercepted in Italian waters every month. A court in Rome has ruled 3 separate attempts by Meloni's government to send detainees as unlawful. Meloni now finds herself under investigation from her government's decision to disobey the ICC arrest warrant, with many believing El-Masri was released in return for stepping up efforts to stem the flow of migrants sailing from Libya.
The request for arrest issued by the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has not been forwarded to the Italian Ministry of Justice, as required by law. For this reason, the Court of Appeal of Rome has decided not to validate this procedure. At this point, with this individual free on Italian territory, rather than leaving him free, we have decided to expel him and repatriate him immediately for security reasons with a dedicated flight, as is done in other similar cases.
With Italy's anti-migration policies largely ineffective, what comes next? And what awaits Giorgia Meloni? who was swept to power in Italy several years ago as the darling of Europe's anti-migration politicians and political parties.
Joining me now are from Rome, Member of Parliament with the ruling Brothers of Italy Party, Elenja Lucaselli. From Milan, Italy, Country Director of the International Rescue Committee, Susanna Zanfrini. And from Florence, Associate Professor of Political Science over at the University of Siena, Mattia Guidi. Welcome to all of you. Elenja, let me begin with you. The fact of the matter is that Italy is the only EU country where migrant arrivals are increasing. And when you look at it, Meloni's flagship policy, I think you can call it that, the Albania Migrant Center, is, for lack of a better way of putting it, is just sitting idle. Do you think it's fair to call it a success when the numbers are contradicting the policy's effectiveness?
Well, first of all, it's not exactly true that the numbers are going up. There are, as you know, in immigration, there are always a certain period of the year where we have a more immigration issue. But yes, for sure, is a successful idea. And I think that what the European community is doing right now, and I'm talking about the new agreement that they adopt in May 2024. I think that of course, we can say that our program and the Giorgia Meloni government idea and way to think out of the box is successful. If we look at what the European Common brought in all these documents and the new approach that Europe have in immigration management, we can only say that they are following what Giorgia Meloni said more than one time, and now is finally written in European documents. Because one of our big issue was that for years the policy of immigration in Italy, but more in Europe, was just introducing new people without really understand how much important is that we offer a legal immigration and not an irregular one. And the left side was very not clear about what they want to do with the immigrant.
Okay, Mattia, let me bring you into the conversation. Elenja said that if you sort of think outside of the box, this policy is a success. You have argued that the Prime Minister's immigration policies are more about political narrative rather than sort of real impact. If you're going to think outside the box, I mean, do you think this narrative is working? I mean, considering the fact that it doesn't have to necessarily be a political victory in itself.
If you look at the numbers in the last 5 or 6 years, so I'm not talking about the current government only, you see numbers going up and down and following trends which are mostly out of the control of national governments, include the Italian government. So here I'm not just, blaming the Italian government for bringing arrivals down or having more of them. I think that there is not much that national governments can do because much depends on the instability that we have in the southern Mediterranean. And I tend to think that most of what we frame as immigration policy in European countries is a lot about narrative and what is presented to public opinion rather than big changes in policies, because policies are to a large extent constrained by international rules and by European rules, which national governments can stretch only up to a certain point, as the case of the Albanian center has shown.
Okay, Susanna, let me ask you. I mean, do you agree with Matteo when he says that when it comes to national governments, their hands are a little bit limited? Because the reality on the ground in Italy is that you have real security and economic concerns. How do you deal with it?
Well, definitely there is an understanding from our side as an international NGO that migration is a complex and enduring phenomenon that has always existed and will always exist. So all these means of deterrence only make the journey more perilous and put people's lives at risk. There seems to be still a lack of understanding of what is the root cause of migration and what people's needs really are. So definitely, as Mr. Guidi just said, there is also considerations around the stability in the countries of origins, in the countries of transit. There is also the consideration that means of deterrence, just like the centers in Albania or border patrols, are not going to stop desperate people from taking desperate journeys. They will just make it riskier. They will just let people go off the radar, put their hands and their lives in smuggler hands and in traffickers' hands, and will not resolve the problem. Mm-hmm. If we look at migration trends in the past 10 years, migration is a reality for Europe. Numbers have been going up and down for different reasons, but it hasn't stopped, and it will not.
Let me ask you, I mean, since you mentioned the root cause, let's leave that aside for a second and bring up the Albania issue. The migrant processing centers there have been widely criticized, but when you look at sort of EU migration policy, it may soon change to allow such offshore processing centers. Are you concerned that Italy's approach could become the new norm for the continent?
Yes, we are concerned, especially because offshoring screening processes, placing those centers in offshore facilities where there's little to zero possibility to monitor people's rights, conditions, providing people with their legal rights is definitely concerning. Also, the screening, the fast-track procedure is actually most of the times failing to detect vulnerabilities, and especially for very vulnerable people migrating, this is definitely a problem. So yes, we are very concerned.
Okay, Elenja, I mean, if the European Union is moving towards outsourcing migrant processing to third countries like Albania, do you think that it's fair to say that perhaps the Prime Minister's approach is ahead of the curve rather than a failure?
Well, as I say, I think that is another way to think at this issue, that it's been said very well, is not an issue that we have from now, but from years. The real difference is now that someone is taking care of this issue. And finally, this is one of the first point in the European Commission agenda, which wasn't before. If you think at the new pact of migration and asylum that we are facing in these days, I think that the approach, the cultural approach, is completely different, and this is a milestone that is really, really important, because what we learn from the agreement between Rome and Tirana is that it's possible to manage a hub outside, and is possible to manage the control of illegal immigration, because we always have to remember that we are talking about illegal immigration. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the milestones that I think finally Europe is seeing. And of course, this is a new way to understand the problem. And I agree that immigration we will always be, but we need to manage. And what was missing in the past 10 years was the managing of immigration. And you can give more rights and recognize more rights to be in Europe when you manage in the right way. So, accept the help from foreign countries is just something more and really helpful. And we have to understand this and now close ourselves or our mind to how really manage the rights of people that want to be in Europe and that have the
Okay.
rights to be in Italy.
Susanna, I want to bring you in because you're obviously not agreeing with what Elenja is saying.
I think that just putting people in a de facto detention center in Albania after they have crossed the desert, crossed the Mediterranean Sea, after they have paid to the local mafias all their savings is not a solution to manage migration. Europe should open legal channels for people who are migrating, should open like resettlement and complementary pathways for people that have asylum claims without forcing people to. It's not enough. The quotas are not enough. So there needs to be an understanding of really what people need and not just the propaganda of wanting to manage like migration issues away from the public eye. And by the way, the centers in Albania at the moment are empty. So for now, this experiment has just proven to be costly, cruel, and counterproductive. So I completely disagree with, I'm sorry, Mrs. Lucaselli's opinion. Although definitely migration and asylum that are managed in a way that protects the dignity of people, the safety of people, definitely is like our mission and our vision as well, but not this way.
Yeah, Elenja, just a quick response to that before I want to turn back to Mattia as well.
Well, if Europe follows the strategy of the Italian government, it's because it is based on cooperation with other countries and to combat the human trafficking and to put far from us everything is illegal. The answer is not just let everybody come here and not give them the real assistance that they need.
Okay, Mattia, you've been listening to Susanna and Elenja. Susanna was saying, all right, right now, it's costly, it's cruel, and it's counterproductive. Your thoughts on where it is right now? Do we have to give it some time to see how it plays out?
I think that in terms, even if the Albanian center works, we are not going to see a big impact because it's a small center that can only manage a small number of migrants and a small number of applications. So I tend to side with the opinions that say that this is mostly a policy action aimed at projecting a certain image on the public opinion, showing that the government is putting migrants away, is not letting them come to Italy. And this all serves a legitimate public opinion and PR, let's say, strategy. But if we want to argue that this is a solution, I mean, at least you would need to build hundreds of centers like this. This is not going to happen. It's very unfeasible, and it's very unlikely that it will happen. And so the question remains. It is true. I agree with the MP saying that the European Union is gradually embracing the Italian approach, because it's true that the European Union is increasingly becoming concerned with the securitization of the borders and with making more and more difficult for people to come to Europe. But this is a question, and from this point of view, certainly the Italian government is leading the European approach. I agree. If this is going to work, and at what cost, it's something that on which I am much, let's say, less optimistic.
Okay, Matteo, you mentioned public opinion, and I feel that this is important. Susanna, I mean, when you look at the current government, it remains relatively popular despite its immigration policies. Are humanitarian organizations like yours struggling to shift public opinion when it comes to this issue?
I think this issue is something that really grasps a lot of passion from people, because it's easy to make people feel either scared or this is, as I said, migration is a complex phenomenon, so it's easy to protract it in a way that can generate fear. So yes, we are definitely concerned that the public opinion is taking one or the other side, especially a side that is not promoting building bridges, but instead building walls, because this is, to me, something that does not benefit the society as a whole in general, also for the people that are already in the country and for their successful inclusion.
Matteo, I want you to put this into perspective for me from an Italian politics perspective. Why do you feel that the opposition has been unable to sort of jump on this? I mean, has not really sort of presented a compelling argument, and they really haven't been able to sort of capitalize on this?
Well, I think that the migration issue has been very successfully weaponized by right-wing parties and by all parties that are now part of this government. And it is currently very risky to openly sketch out a strategy on migration that is for inclusion, for opening, let's say, not opening borders indiscriminately, but at least having a more pragmatic approach, if you want. And on this, I think that the right has successfully weaponized immigration and made it very problematic for the opposition to propose a different approach. Then, I mean, it is not for me to say whether the opposition should just focus on the failures. Like in the Albanian case. In the Albanian case, you have seen the opposition much more vocal, because that was a clear failure even from their point of view. But if you look at the day-to-day management, it is much more difficult. And I think my view is that the opposition currently is not trying to make this issue very salient, because it fears that on this issue, the government and right-wing parties have a positional advantage, if you see what I mean.
Elenja, I do have to ask you this. In our news story, we mentioned the sudden release of Osama al-Masri Najim. But do you feel that, given his ICC arrest warrant, do you feel that this was perhaps the best look for the country?
Well, of course, we, our mission is to have legality and security in our country. So there was no other way that bring al-Masri and take al-Masri and bring him out of our country. That and actually, I think that the government not only made the right decision, but also was clear, was very focused, and was quick in the decision and make this happen. So I think that we did the best the government decide for the best.
Okay, Susanna, I don't have a lot of time left, but I want to ask you. I mean, when you look at Italy's cooperation with Libya, doesn't the reality of mass migration demand sort of pragmatic deals when you deal with regional powers?
I believe that cooperation and dialogue is necessary and that Italy should have such with Libya, but there seems to be a disproportionate attention on preventing people from migrating rather than looking at ways to guarantee people's rights are upheld and also trying to re-establish legality in Libya. So definitely there's a lot more than the government could do given the current relationships.
Okay. Susanna Zanfrini, Elenja Lucaselli, and Mattia Guidi, thank you very much for joining us here on the Newsmakers. And thanks to you for watching. You can follow us on X and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Elenja Lucaselli, and we'll see you next time.